Torn between love and guilt, a confession of betrayal. I'm a 29-year-old guy, and I've been in a happy, committed relationship with my girlfriend, Allison, for the past 4 years. We met in college, and we've been inseparable ever since. I love her to death, and I genuinely believe she's the one I want to spend the rest of my life with. We've talked about marriage, and it's something we both want. We even moved in together last year, and everything has been going great, or at least that's what I thought. My job involves a lot of travel, which can be tough on our relationship. I'm usually away for a week or two at a time, and it can be hard to stay connected when we're both so busy. About 6 months ago, during one of my trips, I met a woman named Jessica. She's a colleague from a different department, and we happened to be assigned to the same project. We hit it off right away, and I couldn't help but be attracted to her. Now, before you get the wrong idea, I want to make it clear that I have never cheated on Allison. I would never dream of doing something like that. But there's no denying that I felt a strong connection with Jessica, and it was like nothing I've ever experienced before. We spent long hours working together, and when we weren't working, we'd go out for dinner or drinks, just the two of us. It felt like we were in our own little world, and I couldn't help but be swept away by the excitement of it all. As the weeks went by, my feelings for Jessica only grew stronger. We'd text each other constantly, even when I was back home with Allison. I knew it was wrong, and I felt incredibly guilty, but I couldn't help myself. I tried to justify it in my head, telling myself that it was just a harmless crush and that it would eventually pass. But deep down, I knew that it was more than that. At the same time, I started noticing changes in my relationship with Allison. We'd always been so in sync with each other, but now it felt like there was a growing distance between us. I couldn't help but feel like it was my fault, that my guilty feelings were causing me to pull away from her. I was terrified that she would find out about my feelings for Jessica and that it would destroy our relationship. One night, after a particularly stressful day at work, I came home to find Allison waiting for me with a home-cooked meal and a bottle of wine. It was a sweet gesture, and it reminded me of why I fell in love with her in the first place. As we sat down to eat, she looked me in the eyes and said, "I know things have been a little off between us lately, but I just want you to know that I love you, and I'm here for you, no matter what." My heart broke in that moment, and I knew that I couldn't keep this secret from her any longer. I confessed everything, my feelings for Jessica, the texting, the guilt. I told her how much I loved her and how I was terrified of losing her, and then I braced myself for the fallout. But to my surprise, Allison didn't get angry or upset. Instead, she took my hand and told me that she appreciated my honesty and that she was willing to work through this with me. She said that she knew relationships weren't always perfect, and that people were bound to develop feelings for others from time to time. What mattered, she said, was that we were committed to each other and that we were willing to communicate and work through any issues that might arise. I was incredibly relieved, and in that moment, I felt like the luckiest guy in the world. Over the next few weeks, Allison and I went to couples therapy and worked on rebuilding the trust and intimacy in our relationship. We made a conscious effort to spend more time together, to talk openly about our feelings, and to be more present with each other. Slowly but surely, things started to get better. During this time, I also took a step back from my friendship with Jessica. I explained to her that I needed some space to work on my relationship, and she was completely understanding. We still saw each other at work, but the late-night texting and one-on-one dinners came to a halt. As much as it hurt to distance myself from her, I knew that it was necessary in order to save my relationship with Allison. Things were going well, and I was starting to feel like we were finally getting back on track. That is, until about a month ago, when Allison dropped a bombshell on me. She was pregnant. At first, I was overjoyed. I've always wanted to be a father, and the thought of starting a family with Allison made me incredibly happy. But as the news started to sink in, the guilt that I'd been carrying around for the past few months began to rear its ugly head again. I couldn't help but think about Jessica and how my feelings for her had nearly destroyed my relationship with Allison. I knew that I had made the right decision in choosing to work things out with Allison, but a small part of me couldn't help but wonder what my life would have been like if I'd chosen to pursue a relationship with Jessica instead. As Allison's pregnancy progressed, my guilty feelings only intensified. I found myself constantly comparing her to Jessica, their personalities, their looks, their careers. It was as if my brain was constantly trying to convince me that I'd made the wrong choice, and that I was doomed to a life of regret and unhappiness. I tried to bury these feelings, to focus on the positive aspects of my life and my relationship with Allison. But the guilt was like a dark cloud, always hovering just out of sight, ready to rain down on me at any moment. And then, last week, everything came to a head. I was away on another work trip, my first since everything had happened with Jessica, and I found myself at the hotel bar, nursing a drink and trying to drown my sorrows. I was scrolling through my phone, looking at pictures of Allison and reminiscing about happier times, when I got a text from Jessica. She was in town for a conference, and she wanted to meet up for a drink. My first instinct was to say no, to tell her that I couldn't see her, and that I needed to stay focused on my relationship with Allison. But as the night wore on, and the alcohol began to take effect, my resolve started to weaken. I couldn't stop thinking about Jessica, about the connection we'd had, and about how much I missed her. Finally, after one too many drinks, I agreed to meet her at a nearby bar. I told myself that it was just for one drink, that it was just to catch up and see how she was doing. But deep down, I knew that I was playing with fire. When I saw Jessica at the bar, all of the old feelings came rushing back. She looked as beautiful as ever, and as we talked and laughed together, it felt like no time had passed at all. I was completely intoxicated by her presence, and before I knew it, hours had slipped by. As the night wore on, we began to talk about our past, about the feelings we'd had for each other, and about how much we'd missed each other. We reminisced about the good times we'd shared, and it felt like we were the only two people in the world. I knew that I needed to leave, that I needed to get back to my hotel and put some distance between us. That as the night wore on, my judgment became more and more clouded, and my resolve began to crumble. When Jessica leaned in and kissed me, I didn't push her away. Instead, I kissed her back, letting myself get swept up in the passion and the guilt of the moment. We didn't sleep together, but we might as well have. We spent the night in each other's arms, talking and kissing and holding each other tight. It was a night I'll never forget, and one that I'll always regret. When I woke up the next morning, reality came crashing down on me. I knew that what I'd done was unforgivable, and that I betrayed the trust of the woman I love. I felt sick to my stomach, and I knew that there was no going back from this. I flew home the next day, and I haven't spoken to Jessica since. I know that I need to tell Allison the truth, to confess my sins and accept the consequences of my actions. That every time I look into her eyes, or feel the weight of our unborn child growing inside of her, my courage fails me. I'm terrified of losing her, of destroying the life we've built together, and of being a disappointment to our child. But I also know that I can't keep living with this guilt, and that the truth will eventually come out, one way or another. So, that's my confession. I'm a cheater, a liar, and a coward. I don't know what the future holds for me, or for Allison, or for our child. All I know is that I've made a terrible mistake, and that I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make amends for it. If you've read this far, thank you for listening. I don't know if I deserve your sympathy or your forgiveness, but I needed to get this off my chest. If you have any advice, or if you've been in a similar situation, please feel free to share your thoughts. I could really use some guidance right now. Well, I certainly hope he can find the courage to do the right thing, whatever that is. What do you think he should do? What would you do if you were in his shoes? Let us know in the comments below. When you subscribe, be sure to click the notification bell. Click here for more Tangled threads.